Welcome to BlackUSA.News Morning Show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Welcome to BlackUSA.News Morning Show. Greetings and salutation, all my people out there in internet land. Welcome to the BlackUSA.News Morning Show. I am your host, William Honolulu Jr. I have an amazing show for you all today. Today, we're going to have an opportunity to talk to Marty Mcnair. He is the co-founder of the Jordan McNair Foundation. This is a man who has taken tragedy and really turned it into an opportunity to triumph for other people. So we have a really great opportunity. And see, we're going to talk a lot about the foundation and what he has been doing, like really been out in these streets and in the corporate suites, making things different for our student athletes. But we're also going to talk to him a little bit about some of the other things that he does, because this is a multi-talented man. He has published a book. He runs other businesses and he gives back to the community. So we're really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have with him today. Yesterday, we had a great time talking to Maryland gubernatorial candidate, Doug Gansler, former Attorney General for the state of Maryland, former state's attorney from Montgomery County. It was a great conversation. We got to know a lot about him and really get some insight about what he wants to do for the Black community. Tomorrow's show is going to be a good one. It's going to be a big one. We know that COVID is happening and that it's not going anywhere. The Omicron variant has come in and is 500 times more transmissible than the Delta, which was 2-3 times more transmissible than the ones that we had in the beginning. There is some really good news about booster shots, vaccines, and things like that. But we really need to increase the awareness in our community. There's a lot going on in the Black community right now when it comes to COVID. This is literally one of those times when we say when America gets a cold, Black people get the flu, pneumonia. This is even worse than that. So we're going to talk to the president of the Baltimore City branch of the NAACP, Reverend Kobe Little. And he's going to tell us about the Baltimore City branch's efforts in the Mid-Atlantic area to really address COVID and educate the Black and marginalized communities throughout our area. Monday, we have a really great show. We're going to talk to Jabari Natur of Soul Vibes Nation about Kuji Chakalia and the event that they're having Monday evening, really celebrating our Blackness during the holidays. Just to let you know, again, shameless self-promotion is what we do here. Because if we don't promote ourselves, if we don't tell our own stories, who's going to do it? So my company, The Grinding Gang, we're having a free virtual workshop on December 28th at 6 p.m. And we're going to talk about business planning. We're going to talk about what you need in a business plan. Why even have one? A lot of people say, I know what I'm doing in my business and I'm not looking for funding. Why do I need a business plan? We'll be able to answer those questions and a few more. Let's see. Comments and questions. If you have comments or questions, or you want to be a guest, or you want to give us some feedback, you can always use the comment section on our Facebook and YouTube pages. But if you want to email me directly, please don't hesitate to hit me up at info@grindinggang.com. That's grindinggang.com. All right, what else do I need to tell you? Make sure that you check out the shows on BlackUSA.News in the evening. Last night, Sister Biz had a wonderful show with Tim Adams. He's the mayor, I think, of Bowie, and he's running for comptroller of the state of Maryland. This is a really heavy political season. Stay tuned to BlackUSA.News so you can meet these candidates and really see, should you be giving them your vote? Let's see, tonight, the Business Roundtable with Doug Blackshear out of Oakland, California. That's 7 p.m. tonight. Please don't forget to log in and enjoy that. Let's see what else is going out. Oh, I got to give some big shout outs to some of the businesses in Baltimore real quick. So black businesses doing some big things. Want to say a big shout out to Couples Tea on Howard Street. Recently opened in the Howard Road, doing big things. Really great to have. I'm looking forward to coming through and sipping a little tea. Well, I'll probably get coffee. Let's not pretend. Let's not pretend. We know who I am. I'm gonna be me when I show up there. Also, another big shout out to a really great friend of the show and friend of mine personally, the Land of Kush, over by the state office buildings in Midtown Baltimore. They're serving vegan food with with soul. Yeah, they actually even work together with the Vegan Society of Maryland, the Black Vegan Society of Maryland, to do the Vegan Soul Fest. Now, if you all know me, I absolutely believe that life is better with bacon, but I really do enjoy their food. I've got to say it. I am a meat eater, carnivore, but sometimes, like when and it tastes good. Like that's the part that really blew me. I'm thinking vegan food, you get it, is going to be like celery with hummus or something. I didn't know, but like it was down home. Like okay, so let me stop. You know what? I have got to start eating before the show because it just always goes off the rail. Um, uh, One other thing, if there is anybody in Colorado, any black businesses that are impacted by the trucker strike in Colorado, or any truckers that would like to speak on this, please. I've been following this story. The guy, Rohel Aguilera Moderos, he got 110-year sentence for a fatal car accident, 28 vehicles damaged, and 4 people killed. And it happened because the brakes on his truck went out. He didn't own the truck. So there's a whole question as to whether he should be culpable anyway. But aside from that, because of their mandatory minimum, there was no intent or nothing, had no criminal record. But because of Colorado's consecutive sentencing law, whatever you call it, they had to give him 110 years. So the truckers were like, we ain't going to Colorado. And what is happening is what I've been seeing is that there's been a lot of conversation about how larger businesses like Walmart and some of these more institutional businesses are faring with the trucker strike. But we need to know what's happening with Black people there. We need to understand how this, even though I agree, my personal opinion, I agree from what I've read so far about this strike. I understand because this is injustice on its face. But there's a very human consequence. Mr. Aguilera Moderes, absolutely. Everybody is talking about him. But I want to make sure that we're talking about the Black businesses who may be in support and find it offensive what the law in Colorado is, but they are still suffering because of the strike. So, anybody, if you have people in Colorado, or if you're in Colorado and you want to join this part of the conversation, hit me up at info@grindinggang.com so we can talk about it. And I would love to even be more educated on this topic because I think a lot of times we talk about the impact without without talking about the people. So I don't want to do that anymore. We're going to keep it real. Now, granted, I'm not going to keep it 100 with you. I'm going to level set expectations. I'm going to keep it 85 because there's 15% of my life you don't need to know about. But we're going to always keep it real. All right. So that's enough of that. Actually, no, it's not. I am. So let me implore you, anybody. I really want to talk about this. And I also am thinking about it from a different perspective when I think about people like Brock Turner or Kyle Rittenhouse, who are rapists and murderers, and he just got a standing ovation at Kyle Rittenhouse just got a standing ovation after at one of the Republican meetings recently. So yeah, this is injustice in its highest form, and I want to talk about it. I think we need to talk about it. All right, cool. And the gang. Let's get to something different. Let's talk to a man that has been doing some big things out of tragedy. Um, Jordan McNair died in 2018 while he was practicing as a football player for the University of Maryland. He died of extreme heat exhaustion, and it was preventable. his father not only mourned the loss of his son, but he didn't let it stop there. He decided that he was going to go and start an organization to make sure that no parent had to deal with this ever again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring to the stage Marty. Hey, Marty.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
No problem, sir. No problem. I'm sorry. Justice. All right. So Marty, first of all, I'm sure the audience wants to give you condolences on the loss of your son. I can't imagine. And I know you and I have worked on other projects together, and we've talked before. And I've said this to you before, but I can't imagine having to do that or having to go through that. So tell us a little bit about what. And I got to give an overview, but tell us a little bit from your perspective. What happened?
So, man, I always tell people, the last time I spoke to Jordan, we had a conversation was May 28th of 2018. And it was basically, the simple, father-son conversation. It was basically like, hey, I know practice start. I'm sorry, father-son college student athlete conversation, because it's a different conversation then. And, basically it was just like, hey, I know practice starts tomorrow. Do well, hey, call me later in the week, because, when they get to college, you may hear from once a week, or only when they really want something, a ride to school, from school, some money, that type of stuff. So pretty much, it was just a basic conversation, son, I love you. And, I would always finish, every conversation off, make sure you wear protection, the typical fatherly advice. And, and that was pretty much it. And, where it all kind of started was, that was Tuesday or Monday, and practice was that Tuesday. And literally, it was, I got a call around maybe like 7 p.m. that evening from a University of Maryland campus police officer. And he basically was like, hey, Jordan's had a seizure on the football field. It was an incident. Jordan had a seizure on the football field. You all should get to the hospital. We were at Washington Adventist Hospital in PG County at that time, or he was. And, I called his mom, and, it's like, okay, but I'm thinking, here's a healthy guy. Jordan literally was, 6'4", 320 pounds, 6 size 16 shoe. He hadn't been in the hospital literally since the time he was born. And, unfortunately our lives changed forever at that point. When we got to the hospital, basically, Jordan was in a cooling suit, and now my conversation went like, hey, son, if you can hear me, blink your eyes. If you can hear me, squeeze my finger. And still not really knowing the brevity of what was really going on, because, even though it was some coaching staff there, some athletic training staff there, basically, they really weren't saying a lot, but again, as a parent, all of my questioning started as soon as I walked in the hospital, in the ER that time. And it was basically like, what happened? And had any of you ever experienced this type of injury before? To which they both alluded no. And we literally went from a healthy kid that Tuesday morning. Literally, they airlifted Jordan Wednesday morning to our University of Maryland shock trauma unit. And we went from that healthy kid Tuesday morning to literally an emergency liver transplant Friday morning or Friday afternoon. And that conversation went, hey, Mr. Jordan's parents was, hey, if we don't, Jordan's liver is 85% necrosis. And if you all don't make a decision to have an emergency liver transplant, he'll be dead within hours. And, imagine, we're wondering, it was it was a whirlwind experience, because basically I'm steady saying, what happened from Tuesday till now? What happened? And, literally, we went from like I say, that healthy kid, and then, just noticing the attention that was being put on him. And like a lot of times when you start seeing like school president come down, the CEO of the hospital come in, and like everybody's paying attention to Jordan at this time. And with hundreds of visitors and everything there. And literally it was just like, what did we miss? And our questioning just became so rapid fire. Like, what did we miss? What did we miss? Like, what questions did we ask when the coaches were sitting at our table during the recruiting process? All these different things. And most importantly, if we didn't know what a heat stroke was, because I basically thought a heat stroke was always, you got a little too much sun, you got some shade, you drank some water, you cooled down, and everything would be right with the world. I didn't know the magnitude that a heat stroke, when your core temperature goes above 104 degrees, in layman's terms, that's really the equivalent of your body being in a microwave oven.
Mm-hmm.
Everything starts to cook. You have
Mm-hmm.
a 30-minute window to cool the core body temperature down. And if you miss that window, obviously, it'll get bad real quick.
Very quick.
So, Jordan wound up going, it took an hour and about 30 to 40 minutes to get him to the ER that day. His core temperature was above 104 degrees for over an hour and a half. So obviously this is how we went from a healthy kid Tuesday morning to a guy being with 85% of his liver being dead with necrosis and being within hours of death. That's how it happened.
Okay.
So Jordan got the emergency liver transplant, and Will, my thing was, the whole time that even when we got the very first call, I'm always the optimistic guy.
Absolutely, you are. Yeah,
I'm not the panic button pusher. I'm trying to keep Tanya's mom, just like calm down. Let's get there and see what happened first.
Right.
And which is hard for a mother's love to do. But even during the whole 2 weeks that Jordan was fighting for his life, he was hooked up to every possible support system that you can imagine for all his organs and everything. I was still optimistic that he would get through. And the thing was, really, I knew that he wouldn't play football again, but he would, obviously get with life again. He would live through this. And that was just me being an optimistic person that I am in a sense. And unfortunately, that wasn't in God's plan. And when you're that sick, you basically, what they call it's the ICU shuffle. And the ICU shuffle basically is you can't have two bad shifts. You may have one good day, you may have one bad day, you may have one good shift, you may have one bad shift, but you can never have two bad shifts in a row because really you're just that critical in a sense.
Right.
One of the main things for me, Will, I'd always taught Jordan to be an advocate because I was always an advocate, for one thing or another. And I always knew that, hey, you know what, he'll come out of this and he can advocate for this and all these type of things. So when Jordan passed, I already knew, obviously one of the many questions we kept asking ourselves while he was in the hospital those 2 weeks was, if we don't know these things, how many other parents don't know these things?
Absolutely.
And Will, keep in mind, I had no idea of any statistics at this time. Right. I didn't know that. I was just kind of getting a lot of this information.
Right. Surely. Why would you know any of this?
Exactly. So when I start really seeing the numbers of the 30 plus student athletes that had died at the college level from heat stroke or heat related injuries, complications of heat related injuries, and not to mention the student athletes that had died at the AAU and high school level, I mean, literally my head was just spinning and I had never heard of any of it. And
so this is actually a pretty pervasive problem, huh?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it always boils down to the same thing, and it always boils down to people just not being prepared or not being educated. And
okay,
go ahead.
So let me jump in here because when my kids were younger, they haven't played at college, but my sons in lacrosse, soccer, football, wrestling, and those types of things. And I remember some of the days we would be out there for football practice, and I was burning up as a parent sitting on the sidelines. And honestly, to your point about the education, a lot of the coaches, we as parents were really big on the whole oranges and water and making sure stuff like that. But honestly, we did it because that's what you do. It never even occurred to me that literally was out there saving their lives.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is the interesting thing, Will, to further our advocacy efforts. Jordan was a lifelong athlete. And when I tell you, he literally had the pick of where he could have went at. He had that many options to go anywhere. He had over 30 schools, colleges recruiting for football programs. So we had been to combines, sports clinics, camps all across the nation, literally. And I never ever once, nobody ever, not saying that there wasn't any safety equipment, but as a parent, nobody ever pointed it out. Nobody ever educated. Nobody ever said, hey, we got this over here, or we got, cold water tubs, or we got ice, or we got safety tents and all. And these are big brand name sports, Under Armour, Nike, all these different camps and clinics that are combines, the Army combine that we've gone to. they never experienced that to parents. So there was not anything for a parent to do other than literally sit in the stands. And once again, in the event that your child got hurt, which was a worst case scenario, you would just kind of assume that, this organization had the
They would
system.
take care of it. Yeah. Yeah.
And often, and more than likely they don't, as opposed to more than likely they do.
And actually, to your point with that, there is a lot of times that we just assume people know what they're doing. I mean, I've had, doctors and things like that where, they'll tell me something. I was like, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't jive with what I know about my body. And then we'll do a little bit more like, oh, yeah, no, there's something else. It's like, okay. But a lot of us are we have been trained that there's going to be somebody in charge. I think that's one of the reasons this whole COVID thing has gotten out of control, because there's normally one pill. There's one person that you can just listen to and everything gets taken care of.
Yeah.
But to your point, a lot of these people are just doing the best they can and they don't even know. And it's unfortunate that you have to find out under these circumstances, though.
Sure.
So I appreciate the context about Jordan and his life and his advocacy. But I really I have been very impressed with what you have been doing, your advocacy efforts in the wake of his passing. So let's talk a little bit about the foundation.
Man, so I started the foundation literally 3 days after Jordan passed. And, really, Will, I'd be honest with you, man, I have one other son that's 30. He lives in another state. But Jordan was literally like it for Tanya and I. And, really, this was my opportunity for my own redemption as well. Like, hey, he's going to be, even at 19, he was 1,000% better than me. But he had the tools to be successful. He had a loving father that poured into him and guided him where, a lot of times, depending on, where you grew up at in Baltimore City, like I did without a father figure, basically, our information came from one another, or our misinformation came from one another.
So, what is it? The stupid leading the blind?
Oh man, it was literally the misinformed rites of passage into manhood was so distorted that really we figured it out. Everybody was running off of misinformation.
Absolutely.
So I just refused to let him do that. And when he passed, that was one of the things, man, Will. So the grief, I can't even put the grief into words, but one of the main things was if I don't put it in, if I don't turn it into a purpose, Will, people see me on TV and in the media frequently, but you probably would have saw me one good time because I would have acted out emotionally to the people that I felt that were responsible for it. Because, and as a parent, I think that we all have the right to do so when it comes to someone hurting our child.
So I want to touch on that a little bit later, because again, as I've been thinking about this. I do not know how I would process. How I would process. I have a friend whose son just died in an accident, and I went to the funeral and I saw the video and I saw the pictures and I thought about what it meant for her to have to sit there and pull those pictures, and I lost it. I couldn't stay. It hit me hard. So I want to talk about that, because taking and talk about the foundation a little bit more. But again, I want to spend some time talking about how did you take that and turn it into, because I got to be honest, I would like to believe that my professionalism would kick in and my intellect, but what am I? And you responsible? Oh no! I ain't always worn a suit, so I can.
Hold on, Will. Me either. And the interesting thing, like I said, I'm from Baltimore City, so there's evidence of evolution in my story, but a lot of my friends that love Jordan, it wasn't.
Hey, you always got to keep some friends that about that life. Hey, because you got to make sure you're safe in the suites and the streets.
Exactly. So there were a lot of point whoever had something to do with it out requests. That was.
Yeah, the fact that you didn't take them up on it, we're gonna talk about that later. We're gonna talk about that later. How you were able to manage through the grief and turn this into positive. But let's go back and talk about the foundation, because you've been doing some really impressive shit with the foundation.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna tell you. So, Will, like I said, we started the foundation, and one of the main things that I really wanted to focus on was, Will, as a father, whenever you lose a child, I don't care who you are, you take the blame. You take the blame because you just felt as though there was more.
You should have been able to do something.
Exactly. So to me, in this particular scenario, I told Jordan everything that I knew in regards to, son, stand up for yourself. Don't let nobody play with you. Like, look, these are, things it takes to, survive.
Yeah.
However, I never taught Jordan to speak up if he felt uncomfortable in a situation to adults. I never told him to speak up, like, listen to your body, son. If your body tells you to stop, stop. So I didn't, because I didn't know about these things, or I hadn't experienced this. So those are one of the main things that we focused on foundation-wise early on. And for me, it was an easy transition because I was an advocate and I was a reentry advocate for years, just in my other business. So the main thing with Jordan Pass, a lot of people that hadn't seen me in a while was like, wow, you're extremely busy. But only thing changed, just the trajectory had changed in regards to now this is my mission over here. And but I had already been in the advocacy arena for a while. I was already familiar on how to, set up nonprofits and, found not really foundations, but, that kind of took care of itself. But I already knew how to create something of significance and or to give something a voice, for lack of a better term. And man, really the grief wheel was so deep at that time. The only thing I could do was work, to be honest with you.
Okay. So working was part of your coping mechanism?
Exactly.
Okay. That's one of the ways that you were able to navigate through and give it purpose and meaning.
And and even I still look at like, wow, we've done a lot over the last 3 years, but at the end of or 3.5, going on 4 years since Jordan's passing. But that was really the main thing for me. Well, like the first 3 years of that was straight grief. That was grief just driving me. And, luckily we got a lot of things accomplished. And, really I've had a lot of support because, really Jordan was everybody's son. And one thing that you had just mentioned, earlier when you said, hey, when America gets a cold, black folks get pneumonia. But this was a scenario where, everybody could relate to this. This didn't have any type of financial.
This ain't financial. This is
cultural. This ain't nothing. Right. This is actually.
Jordan was in the circumstance where everybody would have assumed that this couldn't happen. I mean, the University of Maryland football team is no slouch.
Exactly.
They're one of the nationally ranked teams.
Right.
So you would think that they would understand and invest in that kind of protective equipment and stuff like that. And so, but to your point, we had this conversation with a guest a couple of days ago about the way that our children are trained, like our public school systems, our professions, and everything. Think about what other species teaches their children to sit still unless it's about survival or food. We teach our kids to sit during their developmental and explorative time. We teach them just to sit down, to be seen and not heard. Why? Because we're trying to make them good employees for somebody's corporation down the road. And one of the things that as parents, and I am guilty of this, and I've tried to remediate as much as I can, but I've been in it too, where I tell them, I do it, I'm in charge. And so you have to listen to me because I'm in charge. And the cool part for me is that, particularly my youngest son was real slick with the mouth and smart. So he would hit me with logical conundrums like, well, this is it. Why? What are you in it? It's like, I mean, you got a point. All right. And so, it would check me, but like, I realized that I was in that too. Like, yeah, you sit down because I said so. And you have to do, and to your point, not teaching them how to stand up to an adult, to an authority figure. And especially in sports, that is think about it. How many times do you get benched when you don't follow the coach's rules?
Oh man, all the time. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you are trained to, if coach says you can make it, put some tape on and keep it moving.
Yep. And that was one of the main, focuses on us early on in the foundation. Really, we just had to empower student athletes. And, that's always been our mission. But the main thing is, it's like, how do we, as parents, let's empower everybody because, like you said, Will, we kind of create robots in a sense. And, we make a coachable kid, and not only coachable, which it starts in sports, but it becomes in life. But in reality, we don't advocate to say, guess what, or empower our young people to say, guess what, if it feels uncomfortable, don't do it. Because I think what it was, man, when kids get to college, right? Obviously, I think that what they think is if it don't work out with them, they're gonna have to go home and live with the coach. Like, you coming back home to your biggest supporters or your biggest support system, which is your family. So at that time, man, we just really wanted to go ahead and focus on student empowerment, self-empowerment. And not only that, we wanted to educate folks on the awareness, education, and the prevention of heat-related injuries. And that's basically what our mission statement is. And basically not only that, but we wanted to diminish heat-related injury or heat-related deaths from these type of injuries. Because, Will, when it all boils down to a student athlete dying from our biggest two killers of student athletes, we've had some horrendous summers the last couple of summers across the nation. It's always the first day of practice, somebody, unfortunately, a student athlete dies, but it's always two main causes. It's usually cardiac arrest and it's usually heat stroke. And the main thing is, all of them, I mean, you can't save everybody, but the main thing is it all boiled down to, were people prepared? Were they educated properly? Was the coaching staff educated properly? Was the student athlete educated properly? But again, were the what we call a emergency action plan? We emphasize this now, but were the emergency action plans in place? And were not only in place, but were they practiced? University of Maryland, of course, a Big Ten school, they had an emergency action plan. But how long was it? Was it practiced on a consistent basis?
Did they train people on it, or did they just write it down and leave it in a book somewhere?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And what that kind of breaks down for people that really don't understand that terminology, it's the equivalent of a fire drill, right? And it's the equivalent of saying, guess what? You know what? But our fire drill, when you look at student athletes and sports, guess what? That fire can happen every day, any day. So for us, we're always waiting on the likelihood of a fire happening in the office building, maybe, slim to none. But on that field of any sports competition or any sports, it's not a matter of what's going to happen, but when it's going to happen. And the when is, are we always prepared for these type of things? Because if a heat stroke isn't a bad thing, it's a realistic thing. Our partners in the armed forces, man, they have heat strokes. They might have 500 a year. But again, they have all of the systems in place to say, you know what, guess what? We know how to deal with them. So if they lose one person, they take that seriously out of 500 people because, again, this is a realistic occurrence. And they're prepared and they have the information or the systems in place to deal with them. And that's what we really have to do at the obviously at the college level. I think Jordan's story woke up a whole lot of people at that time, from sports programs. And then really, Jordan's death, not only was it a sports-related injury, a sports catastrophe, but, man, it just shed a whole light on a broken system at that time in Maryland. And his death was really a catalyst that set it all off. So a lot of changes, a lot of different personnel have been put in place as a result of it.
Oh.
Yeah, Will, it was, man, let me tell you, Will, this was literally the train wreck that would never end, man. And luckily I had a really, really good legal team that really kind of kept me on point and just kind of kept their hands on my shoulder. And, I learned so much from them at that time. But, really it turned into a fight for 3 years because it was a wound that would never heal. Kipper's story was the most talked about story for at least 18 months to 2 years in the sports world. Yeah.
So when the foundation started going out and talking to people and really doing the education of the athletes, of the coaches, of the staff, what did you find when you first went out? Were people educated? Did they know? Or were people like, what?
Yeah, it was the second one, door number 2. Wow. It was the what factor, and initially when we first started, we were more football centric, because again, we just kind of assumed like, oh, this is a football injury. And the more that we delved into it, you just start realizing this is a outside sports injury. Anybody can succumb to this, but it usually happens when it's a lot of overexertion, soccer, lacrosse, track and field, football, and then it's gotten so deep, or we've gotten so deep that, a lot of times it's always somewhat of a consistent athlete that usually kind of succumbs to this injury. And it's always a bigger lineman like Jordan, 6'4", 6'5", 300 plus pounds. And usually what happens is they do too much too quick on that very first day of practice. So it's really like a re-education for coaches, a re-education for parents, and, start looking at, man, the temperature, because there were so many different variables at play that day that went along with all of this. Like, it wasn't a super hot day. It was only 85 degrees, but it was an 85-degree humid day. So you got to
so so humidity impacts as well.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it's not just one thing. Oh, if it's 80 degrees out, so it's cool.
No.
If it's 80 degrees with 100%, 80% humidity, that actually still might be bad.
Oh man, you gotta change the whole way of training. And really, what it boils down to is no student athlete. So in other words, it's all about acclimation. So all student athletes coming in the very first day of practice, man, you don't have to kill it the very first. So most coaches should know you need 7 to 14 days to acclimate student athletes. Usually in that time of the year that it happens, usually spring, summer, it's hot, it's humid, but you got to give student athletes, regardless of the age, an opportunity to acclimate to the weather conditions. And another thing that, that's real prevention. We started talking prevention in regards to equipment and the safety equipment that should be in place in the event at all times. But really, prevention is acclimation. Prevention is, guess what, coaches? You shouldn't have your 300-pound lineman running the same drill as a person half their size. Why? Because the lineman ain't going to run every snap. A good snap ain't going to be but 5 yards max, if that. So why is the lineman running a gasser? The equivalent of, somebody half his size should be running. Or, why are we running kids out in these conditions that aren't conducive or healthy for them?
Let me suggest and get your opinion. As a for real a real sports dad, what it seems to me is that the level of competition in these sports are taken to such an unhealthy level that that safety becomes a non-issue. I remember when I played when I used to wrestle. I remember one time I sprained like my wrist. It hurt. It probably wasn't that. Coach was like, if you're injured, you won't be able to wrestle anymore this week. So are you okay? Yeah, I'm gonna just put some tape on it and be out.
Yeah.
And listening to you now, I'm like, well, is that why my wrist is still a little whatever? Because they were looking more for the competition and to see that I meant it, that I had it in me, that I had with that hunger. Yeah. But what all that does is it fucks up the investment of my body.
Yeah. Well, it will. The thing I emphasized to, I was down at University of Maryland the other day, and luckily, I got a really good relationship with the staff there, the coaching staff, the head coach, president, athletic director. We've done some serious work together. But when I'm in the locker room the other day, and I was cleaning out Jordan's locker because he would have been a senior this year anyway. So I'm just talking to all of the kids. And, one of the main things when you talk to young people, regardless of how tall, regardless of if they just, me and Talia tackled to me and Leah with the quarterback we're talking at. And one of the main things, man, whenever I talk to these guys, I always come from a father's perspective. And, like, look, bro, the main thing you got to do is just kind of keep your mental sanity. I know it's a lot of pressure, but at the end of the day, bro, try not to let it stress you out, as much as you can. It's a lot of pressure. I already know you're the quarterback, and you're a good quarterback. But at the end of the day, like, look, man, this is what it is. Like, you still ain't but 20, 19, 20, 21. So be that, you know what I mean? Right. Be that and enjoy that space of your life right now. And guess what? You do what you can do, and guess what? Come out and play the game as hard as you can. But at the end of the day, your body is the business, and can't nobody tell you what your business is or how your business feels, because guess what? No coach, no athletic trainer, anything, no strength and conditioning coach can really tell you what you're feeling or what you're not feeling. And guess what? If you don't get to the next level, the only way they're not going with you. So at the end of the day, if you don't take care of your business, which is your body, you're the only one that's going to feel the pain. And one of the main things, Will, we just got a significant law passed earlier this year, the Jordan McNair Safe.
I wanted to talk to you about that. Governor Hogan signed that.
Yeah, man. That was
look at you jumping on my show notes and taking us where we need to go. Go ahead with your bad self.
It will, man. I'm gonna tell you, that was one of our biggest achievements thus far. Especially and the support that we've gotten in the state of Maryland, man. The state of Maryland, man, really literally from the House to the Senate, man. And, that literally was a bipartisan effort. And, you know, I know you talk politics, but Maryland was really a good example of how to protect all of our student athletes and how to come together. But like once I said early on, you know, that, you know, this didn't have anything to do with any barriers. You know, guess what? We all got kids. We all got student athletes. A lot of us have been student athletes ourselves. So at the end of the day, man, guess what? We can all come together on this one particular, we can agree to this one thing, you know, in regards to, and nobody's religious beliefs or anybody's belief system really played a part. Now, Will, that was just in the state of Maryland. So literally, you know, we got to the congressional level and we spoke in front of Congress and I testified in front of Congress to really, you know, get some momentum behind this bill because, you know, we don't want to go to 52 states to try to implement this bill. Let's do it at a federal level and we can have a baseline standard all the way across the board in regards to student athlete safety. But Will, you know, it's a different animal at that level, you know, in regards to I'm not a super duper political person, but I do learn quick, especially when it's something that impacts something that, you know, we're trying to do or our advocacy efforts. And it's just unfortunate that, you know, when you look at both parties and then you look at this filibuster thing and all that type of foolishness, and it's just like your optimism turns into realism at that level really quick.
Real quick. So let me because I appreciate we have stepped into an area where I have a bit of expertise. So let me tell you what I'm thinking on this. Your experience at the congressional level is absolutely is to be expected when regular people try to engage that system. Even with all the press, even with all the positive stuff that you all have done at that level, they're still worried about themselves and their next election. And if you're not pushing that, then that might be problematic. Now, here's what you do. Now, for the advocates in the House and the Senate that you have in Maryland, what you might want to do is to talk to them and ask them to talk to the National Conference of State Legislatures. And actually, you talk to the National Conference of State Legislatures and the National Governors Convention and some of these types of organizations. And also, real talk, let's get this shit in with HBCUs. I know University of Maryland isn't an HBCU, but again, you know, especially right now with this new focus on HBCU athletics, and we know that an HBCU is going to be last on the list to get some of these resources just because they Black. That is just what's going to happen. So we can start partnering with them, and so now you have the HBCUs along with these legislators in these different states and these governors, because once they start seeing that other people getting props on something, because this is an easy one for a legislator. I go to one of these conventions, I see somebody talking about in California, I see you do a presentation in California or a presentation out in California. I'm like, hey, can you come out and tell us about this? Because it's an easy win for me.
And it don't cost no money, Will. That's the main thing, right? You know what, Will? It boils down to that ounce of prevention analogy, you know, because again, you know, do you want to sit here and put the right systems in place, or you know, do you put the right systems in place from a preventive perspective versus it turning into a liability and somebody saying, well, I tried to give it to you, you know, back then, but now look at it's costing you millions of dollars in the state taxpayers' money or things like that. So I think that it's really an easy fix in regards to that. But I just know that, you know, and this is the interesting thing, Will, you know, luckily in Maryland, we have so much support and we can get so many things done. But I talk to so many different legislators from different states, and, you know, really everybody kind of like, hey, you know what, can you send us the template for what you did in Maryland, you know, in regards to that particular bill? And of course, you know, that's how the game is played. So, you know, that I don't have a problem with that. But, you know, the main thing in Maryland is let's sit here and continue to have the show of bipartisan support that we've had thus far. And man, I tip my hat to the state of Maryland. I'm glad to be a member of the state of Maryland, because guess what? You know, this is one thing that we came together, and not only because it was my personal agenda, but it was the right thing to do to protect our young people.
Like, you know, the interesting part is, and I'd be interested in looking at the data over the next 5 years, is using the last 5 years as baseline for heat-related injuries and strokes. And then taking a look at, after this is implemented, the law is implemented, what has been the change in those numbers? I'd be very interested to see that, because you're right. If we can prevent some of these kids from dying, like, man. You know.
Will, let me tell you, man, and this is, you know, legislation is coming up, and we taking 2 bills into led to 2 new bills in regards to legislation. And basically what it is, we've had, so the Jordan McNair Foundation, we have a national platform. However, you still have a few families that, have lost their kids and lost their, their sons or daughters, and they've gotten into the advocacy level, but they were at high school. So of course, they get right there at the state level. The state is their ceiling. So what we usually do is, when we've had success and we're in a couple of different support groups, and work with a couple of different organizations around this in this space. So what we'll do if a law got passed or has some success in, say, in Florida, and then the same thing had happened in Louisiana, and then we're trying to get the same law passed in Maryland come January. But the main thing is, Will, the interesting thing, why does it always have to be a kid that died before? Like, why do policies already have? The only way people acknowledge policies amongst lawmakers sometimes, unless they're written in blood.
And the reality is that happens a lot because a lot of these people, they got so many other things to do. If it's not, everybody wants some money, everybody wants a new law, everybody wants new blah, blah, blah. So they prioritize based on the stuff that either is going to get them elected or get them hurt from getting elected.
Yep.
And again, can't even knock them for that. That's their job.
Yeah. You're right.
So separately, I want to talk to you a little bit more offline about your efforts for national advocacy, because I had to do a project like that when I worked with the state of Maryland, Department of Health. So I think I have some interesting old notes or whatever that might be able to help you get some more. Some more whatever. So let's look at. Also, legislative session in Maryland starts next month.
Yeah.
So would you be willing to come back and actually talk about the legislation?
Oh man, of course I will.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a couple bills. We got 2 bills that we're trying to submit. The main thing is, Will, really, and keep in mind, Will, when we talk about legislation, I tell people all the time, like prior to maybe a couple of years or prior to Jordan's passing, of course you want anytime you can get a law passed in your child's name to kind of create the legacy or whatever the case may be. That's admirable. But then once we really got deep into it, and in the state of Maryland, we've gotten 3 laws passed already with Jordan's name attached to it. We got a law in Baltimore City, the Jordan McNair Youth Safety Protection Act. Then we had the Jordan McNair Act. And then we had the Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act in the state of Maryland. So Jordan McNair Act and Jordan McNair Safe Fair Play Act. So one was the NIL. That was the latest one. And then we added his name to the Jordan McNair Act. So any college student, if they feel uncomfortable in regards to any type of sporting staff or coaching staff, they can make an anonymous call to report that. And then we work with Brandon Scott. He was before he was mayor. We worked on the Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act in Baltimore City, Youth Safety Protection Act. But the main thing is, that when we did in Baltimore City, what we're trying to do this year, we're trying to take that one to the state level. So what that means is all AAU or youth sports clubs, basically they would have to take safety trainings and stroke, cardiac arrest, CPR, a few more trainings before they can have a team, before they can recertify to get a team of coaching. Because the main thing is, I applaud coaches. But the thing is, they have to be trained properly, and anybody can be a coach just because they got a love for working with kids.
Right. But that doesn't make you good at it.
Exactly. So we're trying to, as opposed to running through all these different municipalities, we want to take this to the state level and say, okay, hey, you know what? So that way we don't have to say, let's focus at the state level. And once again, here we go with that baseline standard of across the board. This is what it should be consistently. But Will, this is the most important thing, right? How many people really knew that there was a Jordan McNair Act, right? How many people really know? And but most importantly, who knows that it applies? How many college students know that law applies to them? None. So exactly, and that's the point that I'm making. So when we have legislation and we can get laws passed and all that, but the main thing is we have to you got to have a voice to get it to the people to say this law is for you and it protects you.
Right. So I got one for that too, because you talking politics, baby. This is where I flow, baby. Politics and business.
Right.
So what you do with situations like that, because one of these things these large organizations and institutions don't want is the concept of negative press or lawsuits.
Yep.
So if very encouraging letters, and I can help you put. I write a mean letter. I write a mean letter, baby. But encouraging them that kind of just like you talked about, I'm putting you on notice that this is a law, and I am advising you that as part of your student athlete sign on, the way that you can make sure they know they can come, because you have an obligation to let them know this. The way that you confirm this is having them sign it, blah, 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 blah. Yep. All of a sudden, when you give them that type of advice, especially because I send it to the law department, I want the lawyers, because if you make lawyers scared, they make everybody else in the company scared. Right. Because nobody wants a scared lawyer. Because a scared lawyer always costs you money. Yeah. Always costs you money. Right. So sending it to their, let them know, like, hey, I'm not saying we suing. I'm just letting you know that this exposed these organizations to liability. This many kids, this place, they died this way. This school district here had to pay this. This university here had to pay that. And in Maryland, all you have to do to comply with this law is educate them and have them sign off on this sheet of paper. Boom. Exactly. Like I said, oh yeah, we got to talk about this afterwards. Yeah. We gonna save some kids' lives, goddammit.
It will, and that's the main thing, man. Really, because that and Will, this is consistent all the way across the board. One of the things, man, I'm gonna tell you, a young lady died in 2019. She was 16, I believe, 15 or 16. 2019. Outside running. I mean, the coaches had the team, the girls' basketball team, outside running in dangerous temperatures. Little girl had a heat stroke. She died. And I know her father because I commute between here and Georgia and Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So I remember, I first went down looking at, some houses or whatever. I literally found her father and, showed him, just wanted to reach out to him because, I understood what he was going through. Right. But Will, it was so very disheartening to see that this summer they charged those coaches with murder. And it's like, wow. You know what I mean? And, the fact that, no coaches, but they literally charge them with murder, child cruelty. Hopefully, they won't get convicted, but still at the end of the day, that one split decision can make that big difference. Now, the point I'm making is I didn't even know that you could charge a person with murder. And now look at all these other coaches that made poor decisions in regards to all these deaths around the nation. Now, the main thing is, if somebody, obviously it is a law, right? But the thing is, if coaches are made aware of that, right, or people are made, this affects you, guess what? Mm-hmm. We don't break the law because I know that, guess what? This affects me. I don't run red lights because guess what? It hits me in my pocket. I broke the law. I hate to see every time I get a ticket come through. But the main thing is, like you said, it always boils down to, because everybody may not be reading the newspaper to say, oh, this law goes on, or everybody may not have a vested interest where I'm the one pushing the law. So I'm the one, in Annapolis, State House. That
is part of the bigger issue. Like people, this whole COVID, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about on the show tomorrow about COVID. I had a lot of people who thought COVID was bull until one of their people got sick.
Exactly.
So for me, I was the chief of policy and public information for the health department back with H1N1. So I had an experience with an outbreak, before, and the people that we used to follow, when I saw them, because they were always calm during H1N1, they gave updates and things like that. They never seemed rattled. I remember in January, either January or February, when I saw one of the ladies that I used to follow during that time from the Department of Health and Human Services, she was talking and she was nervous. I was like, oh, hell no. Nope. This is going to be a problem. But a lot of people, until they started seeing that when 90,000 people were getting sick and dying in Italy, oh, that's over there. Bruh.
Yeah.
So anyway. Before we go, because this is on this show, you plug what you do. Tell me about your book. Tell them how they can go and get your book.
Okay, cool. So if anybody wants to purchase my book, please, you can get an autographed copy from the Jordan McNair Foundation.org. This is the book, Can My Child Play? The Questions We Should Have Asked. And the reason that I emphasize the questions we should have asked, because again, what I do, I educate parents among so many other things in the book. Ask the right questions when it comes to your student athlete playing for an AAU program, a college program, a high school program. You have the right to ask questions. We ask 2 questions. And Will, those 2 questions are, can my child play and why isn't my child playing? That's all we want to know about. Why is my child on the bench? That's it. And how much? Because guess what? I was the same guy when the coaches at the University of Maryland at that time were at our Jordan's mother Tanya kitchen table. We all eating spaghetti and laughing. I asked two questions. Will I asked, can he get some playing time? And what's your stance on what's your support around mental health and substance abuse? Because that's my initial arena. That was it. I didn't think to ask about in the event of anything happening, what are y'all going to do? So I talk about that. I talk about my redemption and my evolution of, just wanting to have a son that was better than me and growing up. I didn't go into too much detail about me growing up in Baltimore City, but you could pretty much see that, I was a statistic at a very, very early age. And, really, I was just an inner city, Baltimore City statistic. You name it. I experienced it, substance abuse, incarceration, all these type of things, man, childhood trauma. And, really, these are things that I always wanted to protect my son from. And it was just like, man, hey, look, if there's nothing else I'll ever do, boy, you will not go down that road that I went. And, you'll be that much better than me. And it just really talks about, because one of the things that I wanted to write, because we were in the media so much, man, and I just wanted people to know our backstory, which was most importantly. And I wanted people to know, Tanya's and our backstory and why we co-parented so well, because we kind of folks would always assume that we were together. And it's like, we went our separate ways when Jordan was 6 months, but, really like we co-parented well. And there's examples of that. And there's examples of self-love, love for others, love for each other. You know what I mean? And it was just something that really that it speaks to so many people. And, really, so the name of the book is, like I say, Can My Child Play? I think that every family should read it because it's definitely something in there for every member of the family. You can get it at the Jordan McNair Foundation.org. Like I said, I personally sign it. Really, if you need me for speaking engagements, you can really contact me on there as well. But the main thing is really, I just think the book really kind of touched a lot of people, and it just touched so many avenues of how to successfully, most importantly, raise a successful child, whether, parents are together or they're not. But that's really the main goal. And I think that that's really things that we should all be concerned about in regards to whenever a child is in play. The main focus should be, how to make them that much better than us and make them successful people in the world.
Right. One of the things that I have to give you a lot.
That was a good plug, wasn't it, Will?
It really was. Like I appreciated that. So you know what? You convinced me. So I'm going on the Jordan McNair, and damn sure I'm gonna get me an autograph copy.
My man, I got you.
I'm gonna go ahead and give my copy today.
Yep, my man.
And you know what? On top of it, I'm getting a copy for me, and I'm getting a copy for the morning show. We're gonna give that out next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things I really want to land or kind of end the interview with you on is my appreciation for how you have taken this amazing tragedy, like parents' worst case scenario, and you have turned it into a way to not just honor his memory, but like you said, to express your grief in a way that's productive. You didn't go out here drinking, smoking, shooting up. You ain't go out here, doing all these other things that I got to be honest, I can't say that I wouldn't.
Sure.
I'd like to believe. That you didn't seek the revenge and you didn't do those things. You actually took the pain and you focused it to make something better for him. And I just want to say like that I fucking find admirable, because I don't know if it could be me. And so and the way, and also, by the way, I am absolutely in to help with spreading this message and stuff like that, especially on the political side, because again, I know how to get them moving, and I also understand how that process works. But we're absolutely going to keep up with this, and I want you back during the legislative session to give us an update, especially real quick. I want it before the bill gets heard. And if you can get the sponsor on here we want to do a press on this. Let me know.
I can actually. I work with Delegate Brooke Learman. That's
Brooke.
Brooke is running for controller, and at that time, Shelley Heddleman was a delegate at the time when we got the Southern stuff passed a couple years ago.
If you talk to Brooke again, tell her she probably might want to swing by here because elections is coming up.
Yeah, I definitely will.
You might want to come holler at a boy.
Yeah, I definitely will, and I think that really, man, Brooke, Brooke Learman, Shelley Heddleman, Antoine Brooks. Antoine Antoine.
You got a good
Antoine,
crew right there.
yeah, Antoine Brooks.
Yeah.
And actually, man, Senator Justin Reedy, man, shout out to him because he was a significant part of getting that bill passed earlier this year. And Will, let me tell you, even when I went to the congressional level, those were the people that I was reaching out to, and just kind of like, we were trying to do some stuff with Senator Cory Booker and Senator Morgenthau. I think I'm using his name correctly.
I think so.
Yeah, man. But it will really quick funny story.
Yeah.
So the first time I was at in DC, so I went to the bathroom before we go to Congress. So when I'm coming out, who do I run into? Raphael Warnock, right? Senator Warnock.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, hey, look, man, got to get a picture or whatever the case may be. And because I told you I reside between here and Atlanta. Right. And, I know the magnitude of living in a blue state and coming to a red state during election time for the first time. And it's an experience. So Raphael Warnock, and he was one of the senators that came in. So I was in a restaurant eating earlier this summer, a couple months ago in Atlanta. So who should be in the coming out from the balcony with his family, Senator Warnock. So I run up to him like, yeah, man, woo. And I didn't know he was in Baltimore. And I kept saying, yeah, man, remember you took a picture with me in D.C., right? Now I wasted 10 minutes
trying to remind him of it.
Right? Trying to sell it more. And man, we took a picture together, right? And he kind of looked over his glasses and said, man, like it was like, man,
how many people
exactly.
Bruh.
So when I told him, I said, look, man, we was on that NIL bill, and he was like, yeah, that's right. You and the three female student athletes. I'm like, yeah, now I should have said that 10, 12 minutes ago.
Dude, this has been a wonderful interview, man. I'm looking forward to having you back, brother. I'm looking forward. And don't forget, tell them the name of the book again and where they can get it.
Oh, man, Can My Child Play? I had a copy right here. Can My Child Play? The Questions We Should Have Asked.
By Marty Mcnair.
By Marty McNair. My first book, working on my next one now, the JordanMcNairFoundation.org. You can order a copy. Right. Yep.
Thank you so much, sir. You have a great day, man.
Yep, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our show, coming to you from the Grinding Gang Studios in Northeast Baltimore. We have had a wonderful time. Thank you. Big shout out to Marty Mcnair for sharing his story with us and the work that he's doing to educate and keep our kids healthy. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking about COVID.